So the difference between successful people and really successful people is that really successful people say no to almost everything. Hi guys, this is Rabi.
Hi, this is Latifah. Welcome.
So this was a quote by Warren Buffett. And today's conversation is going to be about managing our boundaries. So one of the conversations that has been coming up in the last few days, and some of you are here as well, is that now that we've all adjusted to working from home, and we've gotten over the technicalities, I think the issue that's really coming up is how do we manage our boundaries, and especially the whole work-life synergy. So a lot of people, the issues that they're facing is that they're working 24/7, and obviously that is adding to our stress. So Latifah here is joining us, and Latifah, I'd love to get your perspective and your tips and tools on how to manage our boundaries.
So Rabi, I think it's a very valid and very relevant question. And as you mentioned, a lot of the conversations that you're having with your clients actually revolve around this. And it's the same for me. People are finding it quite challenging. Now, before we ended up in this lockdown position and ended up in what we call a new normal, a way of working, which is bringing the office to home, work-life synergy was very topical. People were struggling finding that right mix between giving enough time to work and giving enough time to home. And I think the surprise for most people is to find that bringing the office home has actually created less synergy than there was when you actually physically went to the office and actually came back home later in the day. The challenges are much bigger for most people. They're struggling with maintaining boundaries, not just between work and home, but actually personal boundaries, getting time for themselves, finding time to actually connect with friends, and giving time to family as well. So a very relevant question. One of the most important things I think is going to be our biggest friend at a time like this is the way we communicate.
Absolutely.
So we always talk about striking balances or getting synergy between work and life is really about having that ability to say no to things that A, I'm not able to do, or B, I don't feel that this is the right time for me to do it. Now, I had a conversation with a client yesterday where the person said, because I'm working from home, my boss is sending me emails at 10:30 at night, and he's expecting that I'm just going to answer at any time of the night or day. Because I happen to be at home, work and home seems to have just merged with each other, and those boundaries are not clear. So the first thing I think would be to manage the manager with a courageous conversation around, these are the times that I'm available, and these are the times that I'm actually busy doing stuff with family. So set clear expectations. Yeah.
So sorry, Latifah, I was gonna just say that I think what's happened is it's a double-edged sword, right? It's not just our manager's expectations, but I think it was one of the ways that we were trying to deal with our stress was to say, if I'm going to be working from home, how am I more productive? And to feel a lot more in control and accomplished, right? And I think with that, we've kind of blurred our own boundaries out. And hence the message we're sending out is that we're available 24/7, right? But it is very hard, especially for people in junior positions, to have those conversations, right? And I know some of the people are here who I've spoken to about this stuff, guys. So guys, if you want to interject now, like just send me a question, or we'll have time later on towards the end of our call to actually have a discussion. You guys can ask questions directly as well. Sorry, Latifah, you were saying?
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. We like you mentioned, a double-edged sword. We're becoming victims of our own guilt. I've experienced a lot of people who are talking to me saying, they feel guilty because they're at home, because there's that sense that they're on holiday. So
Right.
they feel compelled to work for as many hours as is required, work at night, work at all hours of the morning to maybe assuage the guilt. So the first thing I think we need to do when we're thinking about managing these boundaries is do a little bit of an introspection about, why am I not able to say no and set clear boundaries? Is this about me and my own guilt that maybe I'm not being as productive as I would like to be? Or is it really about somebody else intruding on space that I've given them the license to do? So that would be the first thing that I would get clear in my mind is, what is this really about? Is it about my manager being unreasonable, or is it about me managing my own guilt? And once I have an answer to that, the way I deal with it will be different. So the first thing is, if I feel guilty because I'm not being productive, then let me set realistic goals for myself every day as to how I can rate my own productivity. So set goals as to the things that I can do so that I can actually at the end of the day feel that I'm more productive.
Right. And I think it's also, it's not just from a work perspective also, but because the dynamics have changed, and because right now in most cases both partners are at home and both partners are working from home. So either both partners are working from home, or obviously the entire family with the kids, everybody is home and working from home. So everybody is kind of crammed up in that space as well. So not only are you constantly dealing with the guilt of how much time do I allocate to the family versus how much time am I at work, but I think that is adding to people's stress. So while this is supposed to bring some kind of normalcy back in our lives where we start focusing back on work, it's actually creating a lot more stress.
Absolutely. So I think managing boundaries has so many different layers. The most obvious one to all of us is managing the boundary between work and life. Okay, so managing our manager. But managing boundaries with our family, I think, is vitally important at this time, because there's that expectation that a lot of families have, because mommy's home or because daddy's home, that it's time to, have a good time. So with children, you have to manage those boundaries very clearly by explaining to them that you're actually at work. And some of the suggestions we've given some of our clients is finding really cute post-it notes that you can write messages that say that you're busy on the door, but don't tell your kids do not enter. So for example, busy conquering the world will be available at 3 p.m. for ice cream, something cute that makes them feel less offended, but still sets the tone. At the same time, it's interesting you said this about managing boundaries with the family. I was having a conversation with a colleague of mine back in South Africa, and she's a psychologist. She lectures at the university, and her husband is in finance. And she said to me, it's unbelievable the gender disparity that exists when you end up working at home, and the kids see both mom and dad at home, and the kids only go to her. Whatever they need, they will only disturb her. They will never disturb the dad. And I think a lot of people can relate to this. Again, I think it's because naturally this is what they do in every day, and because you've enabled this behavior, this is what they're going to continue. I think it's a great time to actually write a new script. One of the things that we've suggested with other clients that have worked really well has been, tell the kids, today is daddy's day. Anything you need from daddy, today is the day you go to daddy, and tomorrow is mommy's day. That works really well when you negotiate that with your partner. If you're having a heavy day, negotiate that with your partner and let your partner take on that role. I think that works really well in managing boundaries between you and your kids.
I think what I'm hearing you say is that it's about creating structures, right? So it's about kind of creating the structure for ourselves as well. So knowing what our day is going to look like, and as well as kind of understanding what your partner's day looks like, and hence managing that expectation and setting these expectations up front. Am I right about that?
Absolutely. I think structure is vital, and it's something that a lot of people are not really good at. And it's probably the time to really stretch that muscle. A lot of people are not really good at planning. They're not really good at structure. Those people who are good at planning and structure are probably coping a little bit better. And I think this is the time to really stretch the muscle for us all to create that structure, to create a routine in our lives, because I think that's going to be key. But additional to structure, in this period of time, what I found, this is something that is important at any stage of our life, but vitally now, is communication. Really openly communicating to the people that you live with and the people that you work with. I think really setting correct expectations about what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do, and when you're willing to do those things, will go a long way in minimizing your stress and anxiety and the feeling of being overwhelmed all the time. Because this is something I wanted to ask you, Rabi. Are you feeling that, or hearing this from your clients, that people are using this word a lot? I feel overwhelmed by all of this.
Sure, absolutely. I think a lot of people are, because everything is new. there's a lot of unknowns out there, right? So there is that element of unknown. There is the element of being overwhelmed by the news and the information overload. And thirdly, it's about the new norm, which is at home, being able to manage the schedules, the kids, having to now look at whether the kids are managing their homeworks and their online schoolwork, as well as the housework, as well as the uncertainty that people are getting, whether they're going to have jobs or not. So I think overall, in general, people are feeling quite overwhelmed. That's true.
And I think I think it's normal. The we're dealing with an abnormal circumstance right now.
Sure.
So having abnormal reactions is actually considered normal in an abnormal circumstance. So what you would consider an abnormal reaction is actually considered normal. And then to tell yourself that it's okay to feel this way. Communicating with the people around you actually helps. So actually sharing with the people in your home, or when you're getting, I think these Zoom chats with groups of friends have become really popular as a means for people to connect with each other. So I think sharing this and being authentic about it, it doesn't make you a super strong person if you tell everybody I'm not anxious and I actually don't feel anything in this adjustment period. That's not correct, because I think every single one of us has been required to adjust, and it's okay to admit that.
Absolutely. And Latifah, I think one of the big things is also, you mentioned having those courageous conversations, perhaps help us understand that a little bit, but just even if, whether it's having that conversation with your spouse who's also working, and there's perhaps friction developing, how do you have that conversation? Or it's a boss who's setting up the meeting at 10 p.m. at night, right? How do you actually broach that subject, and how do you actually have that conversation about creating that boundary? Where does that start from?
So, Rabia, I think it's very, very good that you raised this, because the quote that you actually read out in the beginning is actually the key and the tool right now. When we do assertiveness, coaching or assertiveness training with people, what is the one thing we actually help people to learn to do? It's to say no. And I think it's the thing that most of us struggle. Now, I don't know what the situation is like in Singapore, but definitely in Dubai, and I see that to some extent in South Africa as well. People really struggle to say no, because people consider that they have a fear around, if I say no, that my boss will assume that I don't want to do something, or I'm incapable of doing something. So the most important thing in having courageous conversations is to recognize there's no one size fits all. Again, do the introspection. What am I afraid of? What am I afraid will happen if I actually set realistic boundaries by saying, no, I'm not available? So the one thing that we have found quite useful across the board, irrespective of what your personal circumstances is, saying no in an assertive way with a very valid explanation and an alternative as to when this can be done that would probably be acceptable to that person. So if you have a very rational conversation with your boss, for example, to say, I am so sorry that I'm not available at 10 because of this reason. However, we can do this at this time or that time. Would that be okay with you? I think most reasonable managers would be okay with that. All right. When you get into hot waters, when you get into those managers that are inflexible and that are not able to digest this, that is a separate conversation. And I think we can deal with that in a one-on-one question with somebody, because those are cases that have to be dealt with on a case-by-case basis.
Latifah, I'm gonna open it up for questions if you guys have any questions. So I'll go ahead and unmute you guys. And if you want to ask us questions, or if you have a situation that you're facing, would love to discuss it or share with us, please do so.
So guys, I have a question.
Yeah.
So if you're working in a team and you do decide that you want to keep a cutoff for yourself and decide that I'm not going to work after 5:30, but because the rest of the team is working non-stop round the clock, then what happens is by the time you catch up the next day, you've fallen behind. So how would you tackle a situation like that? Because everybody else seems to be working at the same pace as they are not required, but working around the clock. So how would you catch up?
I think this is a question that comes up quite frequently at regular times as well, not just in these very surreal circumstances. what would be required is for you to have a team conversation where you all agree what is acceptable for everyone as to a fixed time.
तो यहाँ
Rabi,
पे रख
maybe we
दो
could just
और
meet everyone. Rabi?
पेंट निकाल मैं गमले निकालो ना बाहर से पेंट
Sorry
निकालूं
guys,
मैं
wait, I'm gonna actually go ahead and mute everybody and then unmute. Sorry guys, 1 second.
So what I think
1 second, Lati, 1 second. Sorry.
if we can mute everyone, and then if somebody has a question, to write it in the chat, and then we can just unmute that person because they put it in the chat. Sorry, Bibi, to get back to you, I think what would be useful to you would be to actually have a team conversation. Actually call the team up for a conversation and say, guys, you know what? It seems like some of you are working like 24/7. This is actually not working so well for me, and I'm sure it's not working for everybody. Can we agree a mutually acceptable time for all of us to work until? And those of you who want to work extra, that would be fine. But to actually agree then that you don't have expectations from the rest of us who are going to be available on the agreed time. And you may find that that would be 6:30 p.m., which would be a win-win for everybody. So you would give a little and everybody would get a little. Again, I'm going to go back to open communication, and actually getting consensus with everybody is going to help you a lot, rather than just saying, this is the time that I work and I'm now not happy because everybody has this expectation. Open up the conversation. You may be surprised to find that there are other people in the team who didn't have the courage to actually stand up and do this, and you're just making it easier for everyone to find a new way of working that is probably respectful to everybody's work and life.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Although I did, like when we started originally and we started work from home, everybody had a cutoff within their teams. But you know what happens is, for example, with me, because I'm working with multiple departments, and it's very difficult to obviously everybody has their own managers and a set of a working style that they're following. It's very difficult to communicate that to multiple departments. You can do it within your department perhaps and within your immediate team, but how do you deal with something like that on an organizational level where it's wider and much larger than just your immediate team? Because, like, for example, I work with multiple departments.
Okay.
Sure.
Bibi, I'm not so sure what industry you're in, but I can say to you that it's about setting expectations even across different departments. Simply telling people, guys, I recognize that all of you are working at different times. Please note that these are the times that I work. I'm happy to assist in emergencies, but this is going to be my daily cutoff time. I'll help you in emergencies at any time, but please, can we try and respect that? It goes a long way. People have a lot more respect for you when you do that. And maybe they will take a small period of time in the beginning where they feel a little bit put out or offended. But trust me, given a little longer period of time, they will have a huge amount of respect for that. Again, open communication.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Bibi, for that one.
Thanks, Bibi.
Thank you. Guys, if you have any other questions, or, Latifah and I are going to be having this as a weekly call. And this is basically just there to discuss some of the issues that we're all facing. And hence, we want this to be an open forum for all of you guys. If something's on your mind that you want to discuss, we're here. So please, if somebody else wants to ask a question, you can. We want to keep this into a short call. So if not, then...
So Rabi, I think while people are still trying to ask questions, just to kind of close off what we were talking about boundaries, I think
Sorry, somebody just asked, Lati, I'm gonna just jump in. Nada is asking, some people are not open for communication. So what do you do then?
Well, I think that's a case by case thing. When you say people are not open for communication, what do you mean by that? Can you give us a little bit more context?
Wait, Nada, I'm gonna unmute you.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, Nada.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. What I was trying to say is sometimes you want to talk to someone about communicate your boundaries, but the other person totally ignores the conversation and starts talking about something else totally, and you're just stuck dumb. Okay, here I am opening myself up,
Sure.
but the other person is just not listening or not there.
Okay. Is this so? I think there would be a different response depending on whether it's a work. This
I
is a
think it
work
sounds like a
relationship.
personal, and I think let's make it about personal because that's a very relevant conversation to have as well.
So I think it's something that's
It
going to.
happens at work as well with your seniors. They just ignore you,
Mm.
or mostly it happens with personal because obviously it's your siblings or your parents or your partner.
Okay. One of the things that I've seen get people into trouble in all relationships, whether it's work relationships or personal relationships, is timing. So oftentimes we actually choose the wrong time to communicate
Yeah.
sensitive information. And it's just about getting the timing right. So really about watching the nonverbal cues. If you're communicating with somebody that you know really well, I think you would be able to know. So for example, I work with someone who I know that I would never have any discussion with near or around lunchtime if they haven't eaten, because they're somebody who just they get hangry, right? So
That's
when they're
me.
hungry, they're extremely angry. And I've learned that. So my sense is that you're trying to have these conversations with not new people who you have a relationship with. So
Mm-hmm.
number one would be choose your time correctly, because you may find that you're choosing the wrong time to have this conversation, hence why you're getting sidelined. The other thing is choose the tone that you're using and the words that you use carefully. Sometimes people don't respond well to being told certain things. They want to be invited into things, so check for that. The third one would be ask yourself the question, is this person blocking this communication because of them or because of me? A lot of the time it will be because of their own issues or because of their own sensitivities, and hence why they're not willing to be open. So in a work situation, I would probably then send a little note, write it down, because maybe you're choosing the time incorrectly and the person is uncomfortable with having a conversation like this face to face. So maybe send it in an email saying, I try to have the conversation. I think it would be better if I just had this communication with you here. Happy to get on a call and chat with it as at your convenience. So you roll it back to that person. In a personal relationship, I would again pick my time carefully and take this person out in a more relaxed environment and say, look, I've noticed that I've tried to have this conversation with you several times and you're not open to it. Tell me what way I could probably try and help have it with you that you would be more open to having it. So
I
in psychology, we call that roll the ball back, right? Just roll the ball back at the person and help them to take ownership for when they would be willing to listen to you.
I also feel
Yeah,
like
that's really helpful.
yeah. Just to kind of add, I've also feel like a lot of people also get triggered by the tone. So it depends on if you are approaching somebody and you want to have a conversation about boundaries, check your tone as well, because sometimes if you come at it from an accusatory tone, the other person will instantly shut down before the conversation even gets started. So that's just another thing to kind of reflect on. Anybody else? Do you guys want to talk about anything else that's bothering you? How are you handling this stay-at-home situation?
Well, the one thing that I can say is that this particular situation is stretching the limits of everybody's relationships.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
this is, and I see this as an opportunity to really communicate at a new level with the people that you've chosen to spend your life with. Really find new ways of communicating. Find different channels of communicating, because you're forced into a situation where you are in this space, and this is a great time for you to communicate what your needs and wants are in a very clear way, because you're forced to do it. See this as an opportunity to reset the relationship and kick it up to a new level.
And I think the idea is, again, kind of going back to a little bit of the structure, right? So make sure that you are taking out time for yourself. Make sure that you've carved out time for work, and then you've carved out time for the family. And I think if you've kind of created those buckets, and you're not feeling this constant guilt and juggling, all these balls in the air as well. Latifah, how would you wrap this up? What are our 3 biggest takeaways from today's call?
I think the 3 takeaways from today would be learning to say no is an act of strength, not a sign of weakness. Okay. Managing your personal boundaries so that you get time for yourself is actually a very important thing that you need to do, and to please factor it into the structuring. And one that we didn't talk about, but I really just want to add as a takeaway, is managing boundaries between you and sugar is a very important one, because we're seeing all these memes come out that people are, going to come out of lockdown and they're going to be overweight and they're going to be so chubby. Saying no to sugar is a really positive thing.
All right, guys. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for joining us today. And tune in next week. We're going to be here at the same time on Monday evenings. I hope this works out for you guys. And send us suggestions of what you think we should talk about. If you have any suggestions, then we'll make that our topic of discussion. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.